All right, Mr. Pavel Korecky.
It's Korecky.
Korecky.
That's right.
Was I saying it phonetically, or I just don't know how it's spelled?
Oh no, you're saying it phonetically. Yeah.
Korecky. Wow. Welcome to, I can't really call this my podcast. This is your podcast, but I'm hosting. Welcome to Sleep Athlete MD Reverse. How you feeling?
I don't normally do podcasts, but so I'm a little nervous.
So the people
overall pretty good.
The people demanded it, and you're not one to deny the people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Korecky, you're Russian, born in Russia.
That's right.
Soviet Union or Russia?
No, I was born like a few months after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Wow, in the midst of chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Arguably the worst time in recent history in Russia.
Including the last few years?
Including the last few years.
Just everything was complete chaos.
Just terrible.
No order, there was no law.
Money, no law, no money, no jobs.
But a lot of opportunity, I guess, for oligarchs to spring up and
Exactly.
take stuff. So did you grow up there?
I lived in Russia till I was 10, and then my mother moved to America in the year 2000 and took me with her.
Okay. So you have a lot of early memories in Russia. Like, you grew up in Russia. You're Russian.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't consider myself Russian. I don't really fit in anymore.
No?
I'm like some weird hybrid.
You don't
US,
have the, like...
US, American, and Russian.
You don't have the deep overtone of poetic darkness.
Oh, it's still there. But I went back to Ukraine for school, and I can't say I really fit in with the locals.
Mm-hmm.
All my friends ended up being some kind of immigrants that grew up in other countries.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you ended up growing up in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ended up going back to Ukraine for school. That's cool.
Exactly.
Nice. Why did you decide? I feel like that's not a normal... Did you just want to go back to Eastern Europe? It's not a normal path, becoming an MD.
So I graduated high school into a recession. So finishing school as cheaply as possible was definitely a factor. And I did go to college in the United States, but didn't want to spend a lot of money on med school. So I went to Ukraine. And my stepfather at the time was from Odessa, which is incidentally where my university was. So he highly recommended the city.
Nice.
It was a nice city.
Yeah. So how do you think that compared to American med school experiences?
I'd say it's a bit different. They believe, like for instance, even exams are different. United States schools believe in multiple choice and written exams. Ukraine was more focused on oral exams and practical skills. But overall, I mean, the textbooks are the same, so probably the curriculum is very similar.
Were you working in a hospital? Like, were you in a teaching hospital? Or, because I know some programs here in the States, a lot, if not all,
It was a teaching
partner
hospital.
with hospitals. And
Yeah. So exactly, it was a teaching hospital as part of the university. So a lot of our cycles were at the hospital that was part of the university.
Do you think there are fundamental differences in like the attitude toward medical practices? Is it different in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, compared to here?
I think so. I think the main difference is that in the United States, being a medical student is like an elite state to be in. Like, if you actually go through medical school and go through residency, you're guaranteed a salary of like $350,000 and up a year, which puts you automatically into the top 1% of earners. In Ukraine, that's not the case. Doctors make as much as engineers, maybe a little bit more than teachers. So they're just normal people. And that's how it is in most of Europe. Doctors are not like high-earning professionals. They're kind of the same as every other white collar profession out there. So it's not treated. So medical students and doctors are not treated as anyone special, just normal white collar workers.
How do you feel about that? Do you have an opinion on what's? I mean, that's a symptom of like underlying factors, of course. I don't know. Everybody always talks about how fuck. Can I swear on this podcast? How messed up the healthcare system. Like America is rightfully so obsessed with healthcare, and that might be, I guess, a viewpoint that's taken from like a point of luxury, because everything else is so great in America, and now we're like fixing like these. It's a massive problem, but but we have like an abundance of technology and energy and whatnot, and so this is one of the largest obsessions in America, and there's just so much in our discourse and education and whatnot that revolves around the medical or healthcare system. Do you feel that it's similar in Eastern Europe, Ukraine? And do you think that's like that could have led to the difference that you're talking about? I guess you sort of described it as like a class difference.
So the class difference, I guess it's due to United States medicine being purely a capitalist system. In Ukraine, medicine is actually free, like basic medicine, despite how poor the country is. Like, I was mugged once actually, and I needed stitches, and ended up in the hospital at 4 a.m. I got stitches by a maxillofacial surgeon, which is, someone that probably would get paid $500,000 a year in America.
Mm.
And I was expecting to get a bill of like $1,000, and there was no bill. They're just like, go home, like go buy. All I had to do was pay for the actual, stitches themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I paid like $5,
Mm-hmm.
and I went home. And that was very eye-opening, because in a country as poor as Ukraine, I could just go to the hospital and get basic care for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a similar experience in Belgium, and I'm sure the rest of Eastern and Western Europe are similar. The fact that you can go to the hospital for a minor injury and end up with tens of thousands of dollars of bills to pay, I guess that's the main difference. But of course, it's good for the physicians, because they end up with a fat check every month.
For the insurance company.
Yeah, and the insurance companies, exactly.
Yeah, I am I'm drawing an analogy in my mind between medical professionals in Ukraine and teachers here in the U.S. Highly needed vocation, tend to be underappreciated, or maybe you think that's like nobody needs to be paid $500,000 a year. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but sort of a similar dynamics there. Or it's a core essential part of a functioning society, but huge difference, I guess, is that the doctors here are paid out massively, teachers are not. And
yeah, that's an astute analogy. I think you're right on point. Like similar sentiments between physicians in Ukraine and teachers in America. Overeducated, underpaid, underappreciated, and there's obviously a lot of brain drain.
Both.
Yeah, a lot of brain drain to Germany, to England, to higher paid.
So
countries.
people that went to Odessa Medical School, they scatter across Europe?
When the revolution happened in 2014, I feel like every single professor that could afford to leave just up and left. Yeah. Only some of the most dedicated teachers stayed behind.
Yeah.
And most of the talented students also left. So basically, the only doctors that are left over in Ukraine are ones that could either not afford to leave, or the ones that are super patriotic.
Mm-hmm. Did Did you go to school with a lot of internationals, or most of them were local to Ukraine?
So my university, it was a state university, but it had a international wing to it. So, and actually my studies were in English. So pretty much everyone I studied with was foreign. Lots of Israelis. We had a few students from the Middle East.
The concept to me of going to medical school, it shouldn't matter because like medical practices, I guess like attitude or maybe favor certain like subsets of the practice, but you know, bodies are the same everywhere. But to me, it's funny to me, or it just like it seems very difficult to go to medical school outside of your country. Maybe this is only true for the U.S. because of licensing regulations reasons. Are these, if you're not coming from the U.S. or wanting to practice in the U.S., is it generally accessible to practice in other countries? Like the Israelis, are they going back to Israel to practice?
Yeah. Most of my group mates ended up practicing in their respective country. And I think United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are probably the most restrictive countries in the world.
Is it still possible?
Oh, it's possible, sure.
You just need to do extra licensing, or what's
There's no extra licensing.
It's just difficult to get a job.
Yeah, you take the same exams as Americans. Americans do get first choice in residency. But if you do well on the exams, the track is the same as for U.S. students.
I see. So did you ever want to practice?
When I was in med school, I thought I would practice, but as I reached my final years, I think I lost the passion for medicine.
What did it?
What did it? I think I went into it for the wrong reasons. Both of my parents were physicians, and
did you always, growing up and going into med school, was that always all you wanted to do?
No. I didn't actually know what I wanted to do.
It's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment, yeah. So, and probably the reason I ended up in med school is because I didn't know what to do, and both of my parents were physicians, so it seemed like a natural course. You know, like why not? I was pretty good at science, so I knew I'd like do okay at least. And but in the end, I think I'm more like technically minded, and I actually dislike the aspect of medical school where I would say medical school is 65% memorization and 35% logic. I'd prefer it to be flipped, like 65% logic, 35% memorization.
So, well, it's makes sense to me because you completely pivoted into
and I pivoted into tech.
Engineering,
Yeah, that's
pretty much.
That's where I ended up.
So it was going into your senior year, you decided this wasn't for me at that point after having made that commitment, or was this like a full of regret panic mode?
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. Lots of disappointment from my parents, relatives, friends. Yeah, it was a big shift of psyche to switch into something else.
At least you didn't go in debt a few $100,000 to do it like people do in the States, and
That's
then
true.
have that.
It could have been a lot
decision.
worse. I have friends who went to school in the United States, you know, for medical school, and then they switched their profession, and now they're going to be paying off their debt till like they're 55.
Yeah.
So it's a much bigger.
It's a long
choice.
road. So that was astute. You kind of hedged your bets.
Yeah, and I think the fact that I didn't have a lot of debt made the choice a bit easier. Like what's the worst that could happen? That's
totally, you're free of obligation.
You know, it's like I went when I got a master's degree.
Yeah. So we're in the SciFox offices now. Tell me about how you ended up here.
So, right before SciFox, I actually taught at a vocational school. I taught medical assistance, phlebotomy, and EKG.
Was this in Ukraine?
No, this is in America. So I was a teacher, and then I was learning programming because I thought that was where I wanted to pivot, obviously. And then Mike Dabrowski, one of the founders of SciFox, he I knew him since high school days, and he invited me to like an event called Freezing Man,
Mm.
and
I've seen pictures.
You've
Or
seen
heard,
pictures.
I just it's on his website. It's
it's
like
like
one
a-
of the craziest things that this crazy guy does.
yeah, it's like a bunch of people just go to Utah and live in a tent for like a few days. Like
Yeah.
a very, very tiny Burning Man, but in the winter.
It's like kind of a spoof on Burning Man, though.
Yeah, it's exactly Burning Man, Freezing Man.
What is it exactly? I haven't gotten a clear picture or description of this. Is there something to do with sauna building as well?
Not really.
You're just out there freezing. And where is it?
Well, last Freezing Man was in Utah, and there's this doctor that we know in Utah, Carl. He owns a patch of land right by Zion National Park, and he set up 5 yurts. And there's no running water or electricity, just yurts with beds, like mattresses. You have to bring your own sleeping bag. So you would go there and just stay, like literally in Zion National Park. And during the daytime, you would go canyoneering or buggy riding on the dunes, like cool recreational outside stuff like that.
So it's a fun, it's like a glamping trip, except in the middle of winter.
Yes, yes, and no water and no
Yeah.
electricity. Well, yeah, like glamping. I
Well,
guess.
how long are you out there for? You're not like hunting animals to survive.
No. We go to Walmart, buy a bunch of food. So very much glamping, but usually in a very beautiful place.
So, you were teaching while this was happening and learning programming,
Correct.
and Mike is a childhood friend of yours.
And Mike is an old friend of mine, and I knew he worked at SciFox, and he's like, Pavel, you're like a doctor that codes and does phlebotomy. You should come work at SciFox. Like, I'm starting a new project, and I'm like, okay, and I joined like a few weeks later. I still kept teaching for a few months because I made a commitment, but
What stage was SciFox at? And
the hardware or just in general?
as a company, I guess that includes the hardware. As a quick, should we give an explanation? I don't know who will be watching
So,
this.
so hardware. So SciFox is a hardware company that's building a next-gen blood testing device, and it started right as COVID started in 2020. So when I joined, it was 2 years old, and the
Next
hardware-
gen, sorry to cut you off. Next gen blood testing device. People might think, oh, it's going to be in a lab. This is for at-home blood testing, so people will be able to
specifically
test
for
whatever they
at-home
want
blood
in their
testing.
home.
Right. So it's a toaster-sized device that is capable of testing your blood at home from one drop of blood. Similar to Theranos.
It's how I describe it, and Mike can decide to cut this. Is it's Theranos, but it works because
Theranos,
fewer
but it
blood
works.
markers, and
Yeah.
we're not fraudsters.
Exactly. So people compare us to Theranos, but it's not Theranos because we use much more blood, we test for fewer biomarkers, and because the technology since Theranos has moved forward 20 years.
Theranos they were going for 250 biomarkers just for comparison
one drop
with
of blood.
1 drop of blood, and we're doing what is the device at now? Well, somewhere in like the 25 range, right? 30 with a few drops of blood.
As it stands now, 1 drop produces 5 biomarkers of results.
Yeah.
And
So Theranos would need 50 drops of blood.
probably. Yeah. And we use photonic technology, which is something that did not exist during the time of Theranos.
Well,
So
Theranos,
silicon
when did they
photonic
start? In
chips.
2008?
Theranos began in early 2000s, I think.
So what stage was the company at? You were describing
So the company was pure hardware. It had no e-commerce division whatsoever, so 0 revenue. And I joined. I was employee 0 for the e-commerce division, and we just started figuring out how do we actually sell something to generate a profit, and to generate a user base that will later use the hardware product.
So you were number one. It was Mike Diedrich. You joined.
Well, there were, lab employees for the e-commerce side.
Oh,
for the kit team.
Okay.
What's now known as the kit team. I was employee 0. And
This was how long ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So last April.
Yeah.
And we started brainstorming, like, what do we sell? And we found competitors, we did competitor analysis, and we settled on selling ADX kits. So also at-home blood tests, but ones that require the user to send a sample back to the lab. And a couple of months later, Colin joined, and then we got a proper developer. The MVP was actually coded by me, like a very terrible version, but it worked.
Is that what we're building off of now? It's still
Yeah.
the bones are still there.
The bones are still there. The first reports are almost exactly the same as they are now. So the gauges, except everything was black. The theme was dark. We thought it was cool to be like a biohacker, and so we built for people who are super nerds.
So when you sent out the first kit with a real customer, was it just you and Mike working on that, or had Colin joined at that point?
By the time
Like,
we
how long did
sent
it take to
something
ramp
out
up?
to like actual customers, Colin was already working at the company.
So it took from ideation with Mike through sending an actual product, what, like 4 months?
So let's see. We began working in April, then started coding in May. Then Colin joined around June, and that's about when the alpha started. And we made our alpha users wait an entire month for results. And by July, August, we started shipping our first results. And September is when we launched the beta, or actually
But June,
the real product.
it was 2.5, 3 months by the time
Yeah.
you had a first customer.
Yeah,
or
we
was
went
it just
from
like
alpha to selling it to real customers in 3 months.
were the alpha users just friends, family?
They were all people we knew, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And, the
yeah.
first reports-
Quick ramp up for not telemedicine, healthcare, health tech,
Yeah.
e-commerce product.
The first reports were terribly manual. We were like manually punching in numbers
Yeah.
into a JSON document.
You got to do it to start. Yeah. So how there's a few pivots in your life, but SciFox kind of marries your medicine background with tech. Do you feel like you get a lot of you get your medicinal fix? That sounds like you're doing drugs. Do you feel like you're satisfying all sides of your vocational interests, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a perfect fit for me. It's a medical tech company, right? So,
But are you like you're in the weeds dealing with business operations? Are you also, and you work with the developers? You're getting that side. I don't know if you ever envisioned yourself becoming an operator of a business. Maybe you did. So you get that side too. What about the healthcare medical side? Are you helping out with that? I mean, I assume you're like putting the kits together, biomarkers, working with like the lab. Is that like satisfying that itch, or are you kind of moved on from, you know?
No, it's still nice. You know, I spent 6 years studying medicine.
Yeah.
It's
Nice to use.
it's good to apply my knowledge at least a little bit.
Yeah.
We still do a lot of clinical operations at SciFox. So, you know, we launched supplements, coaching. We came up with all the panels that all require at least some medical knowledge. Now we are launching Heart Health, which is a proper healthcare product where we actually, not only are we testing our users, but we are also offering viable medical solutions to high cholesterol and so on. So no regrets on studying medicine, because I could still apply it.
You think it gives you a real edge at this company? Like, do you think it's extremely useful as a business operator in this space to have had that experience, that background?
So obviously it's very useful in a medtech company, but in general, a medical degree is pretty versatile. It teaches you to think in a pretty analytical way. And Generally, it teaches you to grind long hours, which is also useful when you're working at a startup. So, working long hours without getting tired, working on teams, because there's a lot of collaborative work.
It's a fun dichotomy, I think, between med school and what we're doing now. And that med school, how I view it is, or one way to look at it, overly simplified, is that you're just learning about like all of the trillion ways that you can die, and here we're preventing all of those. I don't know.
Yeah, in a way, we have the potential to save more people than any individual physician. So that's exciting. We can be physicians for tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And one more thing that medical school taught me is to not be afraid of daunting challenges. Because every exam in med school it just seems impossible due to the amount of information that has to be consumed in a short time. And that's valuable in a startup, to just not be afraid of the challenge and just start somewhere. And eventually you'll get to a point where you make progress. If you don't face the fear and you give up, you never actually make any progress.
Wise words from Pavel Korecky.
That's right. Sleep athlete MD.
I assume a lot of people, especially since AI is, in the forefront now, and everybody's saying, oh, AI is going to replace everything, AI is replacing radiologists, blah, blah, blah. I think there's still, we're still a ways away from that, but a lot of the diagnostics jobs will and should totally be not replaced. It's going to augment doctors for the most part. But this technology and the data required to build it, data which we're collecting on behalf of our users, I don't know if that's the kosher thing to say, that we're collecting on behalf of our users, will enable that future. A lot of what that future is, though, is like, in large part, replacement of the PCP relationship that, the general population has. And
we don't necessarily need to replace the PCP relationship. We can actually enable PCPs to have a wider scope of relationships with their patients. A physician using our platform will be able to service a wider net of patients with much more efficiency. And the delays to treatments will be lowered. If they can get quick diagnostics in a very easy, high compliance way, that means that more people will be served with less overhead.
Well, what you're talking about is a solution for the doctors.
Right.
I tend to think about it as, and maybe that is a way to help, larger, broader set of the population that needs better diagnostics, and better care in general. But I'm viewing this as like a solution for the end user. What is best for the end user? Is what's best for the end user to have frictionless access to diagnostics and an assessment of their health and action plans and whatnot? Or is what's best for the user like the trust and, good feeling that they get from getting the word from their doctor that all is okay, even if this biomarker might be out of range,
It's a rare case for a patient to feel confident after a visit with their physician. Usually physicians spend a very minimal time seeing their patients, and rarely do they say anything reassuring. So I think that the market will decide. Our job is to provide a convenient platform, and then the market forces will decide how many physicians end up losing their jobs over it.
What is your intuition, though? If, let's say, our at-home box works, diagnostic tool works. Um, we we're starting to, put together efforts to build out our data science capabilities. So we build those out, and we have really good predictive analytics that we can provide our users. We can really, in a fine-tuned way, tell them which changes in their lives will lead to what differences in their blood work, and so like what will actually help them live longer and healthier. Let's say we're able to do all of that. Is your intuition that the average person, and maybe it's different by age, the average person will still have a PCP, or do you think they will just self-educate and do all this themselves?
So if it's not legally required by state law, then I think most people will opt to not have a physician, just to.
I don't have a physician.
Neither do I. but there are always going to be people that will want a human, similar to how if there's a robot masseuse, some people will still choose to go to see a human masseuse, even if the.
Interesting analogy. Even if the robot is 10x better?
Even if the robot is 10x better, some people just expect and want some human interactions. So we shouldn't forget the human interaction factor for some, especially elderly patients. A physician and the patient-physician interaction is one of the few times they have a human interaction in any given month. So some people will still need that, and maybe we'll need to replace that with some kind of other platform like social work. But for pure medical care, I think a technological solution is the future. There's no way we can.
Well, like surgery and everything aside, we're talking
about
more in the
primary
near
care,
term.
like general checkups and
Diagnostic things, and then
medication management, things
yeah.
like that. Procedures will always remain in, well, not always, but in the near future, they'll remain in the hands of humans.
Yeah. Do you yourself deal with any health? I don't know how comfortable you are sharing these things, but like, is this a solution for you, or what lifestyle changes have you made? We get a lot of customers who are making a lot of changes, and that's why they come across blood testing. They want to track these changes, right? Do you resonate with that?
So, when I joined SciFox, and this is a bit personal, I was in the middle of a divorce, and as part of our alpha, we did weekly testing. So every week, blood test. And I could just see my testosterone levels plummeting over like 3 months. And just seeing the data, it made me very conscious that I have to change something. So it made me, try to sleep better, try to exercise more, eat more protein, and so on. So seeing data is a tool in itself. Just having something in front of your eyes is a tool for encouragement, for improvement. And it made me, I think it made me make a lot of good choices towards my health. Which brings me to today, where I'm generally healthy, but my sleep is quite terrible. This began like with a real problem. I really don't sleep well, and I think it has a huge impact on my life. Like, who knows what my biomarkers would be like if I had good sleep.
So what are you doing to change that? And then I'm gonna get to why are you putting it out there? Do you think it's valuable for others to watch and follow your journey? Well, let's start with the first question, which was what are you doing to change it? Yeah.
So right now, just simple changes, whereas I'm trying to sleep at a more consistent time and wake up at a consistent time, even on weekends. That's like the number one easiest change. The second easiest change is to attempt to view sunlight in the morning hours between waking up and noon, at least for a few minutes a day. That's actually a very easy change that had some pretty good impacts.
You actually noticed it?
I did.
Was it immediate? Like first day?
Literally immediate.
Wow.
The very first day of seeing sunlight. It doesn't work quite as well on a cloudy day, but on a bright sunny day, it works wonders.
Yeah.
And then change three is one that I actually started even before the whole SleepMD experience. Is cutting back on caffeine. I used to be like a caffeine addict.
Drinking
a habit I
into the
developed in med
evening?
school. What?
Drinking into the evening.
Not in the evening, but I would have like 4 or 5 cups of coffee. I cut it back to no caffeine on most days, and then at most 2 cups a day, like small cups. That had a big impact.
No caffeine on most days?
On most days,
Wow. Do you feel a lot of people that do this, myself included, sometimes I take cleanse, I report that they feel more energized after having done that for a while on those days.
So caffeine, it gives you a spike for a few hours and then you crash. You just feel more leveled on days that you don't drink caffeine. But it does, if you do have a habit of caffeine consumption, it will take you at least a month to get to baseline. So for most people, I don't really recommend quitting caffeine entirely, just cutting it back to sub 200 milligrams a day and keeping it
Like
to
2
before
cups of
2
coffee?
p.m.
2 cups of coffee?
That's about 2 cups of coffee, yeah.
Do you also, I mean, this is OG Huberman stuff, his first 3 episodes. Did you listen to those? Are you familiar?
Well,
Obviously,
of course I'm
everybody
familiar
knows who
with Huberman. I
Huberman
don't
is,
know if
but
I
have you
to
ever
the first
listened
3.
to his?
I listened to sporadic episodes of Huberman.
Yeah, he blew up because of like the sleep episodes, in my opinion. I mean, they were his first ones, so it's obviously correlated. But it's everything you're saying. There's also like, you don't drink coffee within the first 2 hours of waking up if you're going to drink it. And then he modified it to say randomly change the time that you wait to drink coffee, because then your body won't ever habituate to like releasing cortisol at the same time from the same trigger. You know, if you drink coffee right away when you wake up, or like at 8 a.m. every morning, then you'll habituate to that. So his guidance was to randomly modify.
I mean, I know some people drink coffee right after waking up with no ill effects. I'm not sure how big of an impact it is.
No ill effects because they continue to do it.
Right. And some people are just different, I guess. It doesn't affect
Built
everyone
different.
in a similar way. But the Dr. Pavel recommendation is to not drink coffee until you eat some protein in the morning. You'll have a much smoother caffeine high.
What if you're one
and
to
lower
fast?
crash. What if you're fasting?
Yeah.
Don't drink caffeine.
Have you ever tried
Keep it
teas
to
or
green tea.
yerba mate? I drank yerba mate for a very long time.
Yerba mate is good.
It has, I forget what it is, L-theanine, and it kind of
It mellows
takes
out
off
the
the
caffeine.
edge, and you don't feel as much of a crash.
Sure, green tea is great.
Yeah.
Similar. Actually, all teas have L-theanine.
Have you replaced coffee with anything, or you just cut?
When I initially quit coffee, I replaced it with black tea for a few months, and then I tapered off the tea. That's kind of how I did it.
Yeah.
But I still drink coffee on occasional days, but definitely never more than 5 days in a row.
So are you making changes and seeing, like, tracking it in where you wear Whoop? You're wearing
I wear
2
a Whoop
devices.
and a Fitbit. It's not double tracking. These guys don't always agree, but they're fun to compare.
Really? Is the error margin, is it consistent at least, or
It's all over the place.
Wow,
especially for
interesting.
activity tracking, number of calories.
well,
hours
it's
slept.
sleep? We're focused on, or you're focused on sleep right now. Are they
Sleep-
consistent?
Sleep is okay. I think sleep is reasonably agreeable between the devices.
We got to get you an Aura ring.
Yeah, and now I need an Oura Ring, an Apple Watch,
Yeah.
and a Garmin just to like have the whole set.
But are you seeing changes
Yes.
in your data?
So for sure, on days that I have caffeine, my sleep quality is lower. Exercising too close to bedtime will most certainly ruin my sleep score.
Would it spike cortisol late, something like that?
It's probably a mix of cortisol and body temperature.
Mm.
You don't want to be too hot when you go to sleep.
Mm.
Exercising in the morning almost always increases my sleep score.
Mm-hmm. There's also a really fun one. Are you a cold shower guy? You're Russian. You've got to be.
I take an occasional cold shower.
Yeah, taking a cold shower will. Do you know the relationship between body temperature and circadian rhythm?
Yeah, you want to cool off before bed.
Yeah. So basically, it rises in the morning, and then taking a cold shower in the morning your body will will generate more heat as a reaction to that, and so you'll heat up quicker, and that kind of phase shifts your circadian rhythm forward. So then you'll fall asleep earlier in the evening, and then wake up earlier in the morning. And then taking a warm shower in the evening does this same phase shift because as a reaction to that, your body will cool down faster.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah.
I know the cold shower affects on dopamine levels, but never considered
So
that.
if you take a cold shower in the evening or a warm shower in the morning, it has the opposite effect. Your bedtime will go later, get pushed back later, and your wake-up time will get pushed back later.
I just take a hot shower before bed.
Yeah, so you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah. Awesome. So where can people find you?
You can
Dr.
find
Pavel.
me on Instagram, SleepAthleteMD,
Uh-huh.
and Twitter, SleepAthleteMD.
What should people follow you for?
Follow me for my journey to fixing my sleep and for tips and tricks and also steps that you can take to diagnose your poor sleep and then to fix it as well.
Are you relating this data, before we hop off, to biomarker data? Like, have you been tracking changes in your biomarkers, or it's too early for that?
I have been tracking, and it seems that several days, at least like 5-6 days of consistently good sleep, lead to an increase in testosterone levels and a decrease in morning cortisol. So those are the two correlations I found.
Are there
so
any
far.
other biomarkers that are relevant?
I think that, so obviously hormones and inflammatory markers are the ones that change the most quickly. So I imagine my lipids might respond in a few months, but that would need to be tracked over at least 3 months.
Why would they respond? What's your intuition? You're just like, you're better metabolizing things if you're sleeping well? Or?
It's just a cascade of effects. Less sleep, lower cortisol levels. Lower cortisol levels means you don't produce as much.
Lower or higher cortisol levels? Less
Lower
sleep?
cortisol levels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, higher cortisol levels lead to more fat deposition, lead to poor digestion, and so on. So I think it's going to be a long-term cascading effect. Maybe for the next episode, I'll actually,
Go
brush
through the
up on the
science of
exact
it.
mechanism.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. All right, well, thank you, Dr. Pavel Korecky, Sleep Athlete MD. It was my honor to interview you.
Thank you, Jordan. My
Yes.
honor to be here.